Shabbat Shalom. I'll tell you, I love B'nai Mitzvah, and also I love when there's not a B'nai Mitzvah, when there's a moment that we can just be together. We can do things like it took 99 years to come and to celebrate. I like it. You're raising the 99-year power that Rose has, and you certainly do. So it's wonderful to be together. So I thought that we would dive into the Parsha a bit more. And so as I was reading the Parsha, what struck me is lying. We're not supposed to be lying. Shabbat Shalom. So I don't actually. It's great that Brooke and my friends Brooke and Lauren are here because they years ago got me onto this TV show, The Good Place, right? Like during, I think it was around your bat mitzvah. You were like totally into this TV show, The Good Place, and there's a character in that TV show, if you haven't seen it, Chidi, who is like a moral ethicist, and one of his dilemmas all throughout the many seasons of the show is that he cannot tell a lie at all. And so, especially for this first section, I was thinking of Chidi, this character who cannot tell a lie. One of the things he does is that he tries to teach the ethics about lying, not lying, things like that. And so as we'll get into Mishpatim, I wanted to start off with this little overview that it's not so easy, and there's different understandings of modern thinking about lying. So that people at home can hear, Craig, why don't you come up to read kind of the beginning part. This is from an article from Santa Clara University, from their Center for Applied Ethics. I thought it gave a fine kind of overview of some of the thoughts about lying.
You want your coffee?
Yeah, thanks.
Hi, Judy. Hi, Ma. You're watching from home. Okay, Tim Mazur, Markkula Center for Applied Ethics, Santa Clara University. The philosopher Immanuel Kant said that lying was always morally wrong. He argued that all persons are born with an intrinsic worth that he called human dignity. This dignity derives from the fact that humans are uniquely rational agents, capable of freely making their own decisions, setting their own goals, and guiding their conduct by reason. To be human, said Kant, is to have the rational power of free choice. To be ethical, he continued, is to respect the power in oneself and others.
Okay, we'll move on. Maybe we'll get Toby, who's actually an ethicist, to thank you, Craig, to read the next, right, to teach this. Right, exactly. You could have written it.
So the second perspective is about virtue ethics, which sort of maintains that lying is morally wrong, though less strictly than Kant. Rather than judge right or wrong behavior on the basis of reason and what people should or should not do, virtue ethicists focus on the development of character or habit of what people should or how people should be. Virtues are desirable qualities of persons that predispose them to act in a certain manner. Fairness, for example, is a virtue we may choose to strive toward in pursuit of fulfilling our human potential. In virtue ethics, to be virtuous is to be ethical. Though the nature of virtue ethics makes it difficult to assess the morality of individual acts, those who advocate this theory generally consider lying wrong because it opposes the virtue of honesty. That's sort of true.
Okay,
we'll leave it for now.
Okay. These weren't her words; these were his words. So, and then, according to the third perspective, utilitarian ethics, Kant and virtue ethicists ignore the only test necessary for judging the morality of a lie, balancing the benefits and harms of its consequences, right? So utilitarians base their reasoning on the claim that actions, including lying, are morally acceptable when the resulting consequence either maximizes benefit or minimizes harm. A lie, therefore, is not always immoral. In fact, when lying is necessary to maximize a benefit or to minimize a harm, it may be immoral not to lie. Three very different approaches to lying and the place for it. But let's not forget last week's 9th commandment. Okay, Exodus 20:13. You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, and our 9th commandment, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. So now we're going to get into, with that as our background, we're going to get into some verses. And I think I only brought 3 different verses from this week's Torah reading and some related commentary to it, where we are going to tackle lying. And where is it acceptable? Is it acceptable? What does the Torah and Judaism think about this? Because we know, just like as I pointed out with the 5th commandment earlier in my comments, that we're given the commandment, and then the Torah knows that we are going to do it anyway. And so it's the lived reality of how we do this. So it says pretty clearly here, Exodus 23:1, you must not carry false rumors. You shall not join hands with the guilty to act as a malicious witness, right? You can't give false witness in order to curry favor with someone powerful. There's a lot of Like, I didn't write it. The Torah wrote it, right? It does feel relevant, though, to the moment. So first, just at the Torah comment, what do you think about that as one of our Torah commandments? Yes? Thumbs up. 2 thumbs up. 2 thumbs up. That's a good one, okay? 3 thumbs up there. Okay. Yeah, Nancy? Yeah, I think that, and I'll try to capture some of the ideas that when you're around someone that's powerful, there's a habit of being deferential to them. Wherever their power comes from, you said, a scientist or whatever the context is that you tend to be more deferential to them, and you may not stand up as strongly to voice your objection to whatever they're saying. Yeah, Harriet. Yeah. Both of you brought up the idea that it's sort of to be a bystander is easier than standing up, right? Craig?
Social media has become a really good example of this, in that it's very easy to spread disinformation for a much larger nefarious purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And you can very easily change one word in a sentence and make something think the opposite. And there's so many people on social media who are, for lack of a better term, sheep that follow whatever's going on, and then it becomes a movement and it hurts people, like vaccine disinformation and things like that.
Yeah, that it's easy to just give a like on social media, to forward something that isn't really thought through, that is wrong, but it's just so easy to share it, and it's so difficult to correct it. So, let me get to, I see the atoms here. So just one second, I want to look at the Rashis to unpack this a little bit more. So Rashi says on the comment, thou shalt not hear a false report, right? Or carry, the first translation is to carry a false rumor, right? That is to take it as the translation, the Targum, the Aramaic translation renders it, thou shalt not accept or listen to a false report. Like, I'm not going to listen to it. I'm not going to like it. I'm not going on social media. I'm not going to even stand for it. I'm not going to hear it. This is a prohibition addressed to one who is about to accept a slanderous statement, including a judge, meaning it's not only in a court, but it's also just in general that I'm not going to hear this false report. Doesn't mean that you have to object to it, but you need to exclude yourself from that conversation so that he should not hear the pleadings of one party to a suit before the other appears. Right? So in the judge, that makes sense. There's rules and regulations about that. But even in social settings, you should not be in the presence to even hear it, because hearing it and not saying something makes you have some level of acceptance of it. You should excuse yourself as possible. He continues on in another comment on the same verse. Don't join hands with the guilty, with him who makes a false claim against his fellow man. Do not promise him to give evidence for him that will result in wrong being done. A powerful person, don't say that you're going to speak on his behalf. I think we see this a lot. Even if you're just sort of trying to navigate through, you're trying to acquiesce to someone that you want to gain some favor from, you want to gain curry, whether it's a job or a position, or you want to be liked by the powerful person, right? As Rashi is saying, don't do that. Don't join with them. So Adam Rishon, then Adam Sheni.
There's an element of that. Somehow it bleeds into that when we're just wanting to be with the rich and powerful, that somehow there's a bearing of false witness, and we have to be careful, because sometimes the people that we admire do bad things, and it comes out later.
Or, so Adam's bringing up the Epstein files, and that there's names in there that we didn't expect to be in there. I've already proven myself not to be a lawyer, that someone's name being released in over 3 million pages of documents does not implicate that they did anything bad at this point, right? Because they were all types of, and I think there was 3 million released and another 3 million that haven't been released yet, something like that. So lots of names with lots of, and so I think that's important to note, because in the cancel culture that we live in, right, that when the headlines are their name was found in the Epstein files, or then we immediately assume the worst of the worst. Some of the people in the files did the worst, and some did not. That is for the courts to determine. I don't have any information able to determine that. So I think that's just an important, we need to take a beat before we decide what happens when, as more and more of these names, and some of the names did do the worst. But Adam's second point was that it shows that people are trying to curry favor with the rich and powerful. And therefore, there are some names in there. So, yeah. Okay, and then Adam also, second Adam.
I wanted to continue the comments that Craig was making about some of the challenges that we have with social media, in that I've heard the phrase based on this idea that we now have to deal with people who firmly believe that there are a set of facts, and those that firmly believe and are okay doing this, that they are honoring an alternate set of facts.
Yeah, Adam says that that we are in a post-truth reality right now, and that we can't accept that. There are facts and there are non-facts. And people are very passionate about their non-facts, but that doesn't make them facts, right? I mean, even Ibn Ezra here, so we're going back hundreds of years, says that you cannot invent fantasies in order to spread lies, right? I mean, this is great. What's great is that it's horrible, that it is human nature. But what's great about this is that we aren't the first people to be encountering this, right? For Ibn Ezra to be saying that he must be aware that people are spreading fantasies about their perception of the truth. We're certainly experiencing that now. Debbie.
So sometimes the truth or information is so painful that it's hard to process, and especially when it's also such an important part of our community value. And I'm going to say, for us, for me personally, we've been committed for Israel. And recently in the Times of Israel, there was an article about the IDF spokesperson who came out and acknowledged that 70,000 Gazans, they didn't know if it's the count between the military and the terrorists and the citizens, but had been killed, that they took that number as truth. And so that number has not really been, that was a huge issue for our community on the count, but how those numbers, turned out. But I just say, sometimes, just saying those things, it's hard to process. How
Yeah.
do we process when there's something that reveals it, that conflicts with what we truly
Want to be the truth, right? Yeah, so Debbie brings out something that's like really important within our community, that for 843 days, after October 7th and beyond, this war went on. It's not peace now, but it's not active war now. And our collective, the Jewish community, kept saying, well, the number that the Gazan humanitarian or health ministry, right? The Gazan health ministry, we said that's not a reliable source. And we said that for a long time. Those are inflated numbers. Those are false numbers. And just a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago or so, the IDF said, no, the IDF now says that the death toll was about 70,000 Gazans were killed. We don't know the distinction between militants and civilians, that they weren't, but they were acknowledging a very similar number in the end of the Gazan health ministry. And that Debbie's bringing up that there are truths that we may not like, but that doesn't make them untrue. And that the instinct to fight information, even when it's true, if we don't like it, we were part of that. It made sense to us to say that they would be inflating their numbers. It made sense to us because it also was, we need to rely on what we said were reliable sources. That turns out that they were not reliable in the way we wanted them to be. And so we need to accept facts, even if they're difficult facts. So yeah, I think that's important. You're saying that's important to acknowledge, and I agree. So Lauren or Brooke? Yeah. Lauren on behalf of Brooke, yeah.
I'll start with it. We were also thinking about the kind of lies that get spread on social media often about, say, people with disabilities. And there's been I don't know, outbreak is the term, but there's been a lot of people on social media. I have a thing called Tourette's, which is a tic disorder,
and then other people see that, and then they'll follow,
Yeah.
and then it just becomes like a whole thing.
Yeah.
And it actually like hurts people that are actually in the disabled community.
Yeah, thank you. So Brooke shares that she has Tourette's, and on social media, there is I don't know, something that is shared widely of people making fun of people that have disabilities, right? And that it is hurtful not just to you, but and to other people that have disabilities, but also it just demeans how we interact with each other. And so thank you for sharing that, and also for pointing that out. It kind of goes back to what we were saying before. You can't spread it. Pull yourself out of that. If you see a social media post or a conversation in a hallway where people are talking bad about each other or making fun of each other, right, you are carrying a false rumor. You are what Cooney says. He breaks it down very simply. He says you cannot tell a lie, and all of this is from one pasuk. All of this is from one verse. Okay, wait. 1, 2, 3. Okay, Ari.
First of all, I want to say thank you for sharing that. That is so heartbreaking. Thank you for opening up to us. Just in terms of the theme of, standing up and saying something when it might be hard. I know that the IDF spokesperson did come out with that 70,000 number. Whether it's 71,000 people or a couple thousand people, it's terrible. But I just did want to mention that there was an article by Peter Lerner, a retired IDF lieutenant colonel, that said that the IDF just accepted that 70,000 number and did not check it or anything. That at the top, their PR and their, what would be PR arm is almost non-existent. And for the IDF, it was easier for them to run with that 70,000 number than to contest it.
So Ari's pointing out that Peter Lerner, you said?
Peter Lerner.
So written an article that tries to explain the context for why the IDF accepted the 70,000. There comes a point that we say ad can, like there's a limit, like meaning if that's what the IDF is going to say, we have to trust someone, right? Because it is a never-ending possibility to say a what if, or we didn't believe what a believable person says. And so if the IDF could have said nothing, it didn't have to accept anything. So I acknowledge I'm sharing that there's that article that exists, but also in the process of truth-telling, of accepting authorities, where does it end to undermine authorities? Like that's a never-ending process of, well, that's not exactly right. And so, because when do you believe them? Whoever the them is, right? Correct. That is the post-truth world, right? So that's the post-truth world. So I'm conscious of time, so I just want to quickly move through. I know other people had their hands up, but let's continue to talk at Kiddush and to go on. So a second verse, all that was from one verse. The second verse, you shall not side with the mighty to do wrong. You shall not give perverse testimony in a dispute so as to pervert it in favor of the mighty, right? You can't lie on behalf of the powerful people, okay? Ibn Ezra says, if you see many people testifying concerning something that you know nothing of, do not say to yourself, all those people can't be wrong. They can't be lying, right? That there's a lot of people. We should just go ahead and defer to them. Our rabbis of blessed memory derive the law that the halakha follows the majority opinion from this verse. And what he explains is halakha goes by the majority, not the minority. But he's making this distinction. When you are testifying as an individual, you have to speak on your own behalf. You can't just defer to the majority, because that's the wrong thing to do. That whereas the halachic process takes majority rule, your individual testimony has to be authentic to you as a person. And so if you don't know anything about it, don't say anything about it. And do not defer to the mighty just because. Sforno continues, you are not allowed to salvage your conscience. This, I think, is interesting. Your guilt for doing the wrong thing. You are not allowed to salvage your conscience by voting with the majority unless this represents your absolute conviction. Right? I love that. Again, this is not just today. This is going back centuries, that you have agency and you have to stand by what you say. And I think that's so important. You must explain the reason for your vote in whatever this is. This happens to be the context of a murder trial, of what Sforno's commenting on, right? But you have to stand by your voice and not to defer to others. So again, I brought a third verse, but we're not going to do this. This is Exodus 23. I brought verses 1, 2, and 3. And I wanted to give, again, not just to show this from the rabbis centuries ago, but I just pulled out some headlines to show that this issue of lying is not just a now thing, it is also over these decades. So in 2026, just last January, here's an article, and there's the footnotes on it. The headline is, repeated government lying, warn Hannah Arendt, makes it impossible for citizens to think and to judge. That's one headline. Okay, but here's also a headline from an article from 1992. Different administration, that's my point, right? That the U.S. political campaigns, lies. That was Time magazine. An article in 2015, The Government Lies and the Constitution is the title of it. And a book that was published in 2021, meaning it was written before then, A Right to Lie, Presidents, Other Liars, and the First Amendment. So lying is pervasive. And we need to get back to the foundations, that even though we know that it will happen, it is wrong. Even though others are doing it, it does not make it right for us. That is what the rabbis are teaching us over and over again. The context for it may be different over time, but maybe it's not so different over time. So as we figure out how to navigate the news and how to navigate our lives, let us remember what Mishpatim teaches, which is to be the best of ourselves and not to lower our standards just because the majority may be doing that. Shabbat Shalom.